In this series, I'm going to show you how to install Drupal 8 as well as expose you to some of the components of it, including creating content types, installing modules, installing themes, as well as moving blocks around. So stay tuned. Hey, I'm Kenny, the Almost Engineer. So we're going to talk about Drupal 8. Drupal 8 has been out for about 2 years now, almost 3. And so it's based upon what is known as Drupal. Drupal is a content management system that is very popular. A lot of sites use it, including the Weather Channel and the White House website. And a lot of universities use it in their implementations of various systems and services that they offer to their students. So I'm going to show you how to install Drupal 8, which is the most recent version at the time of this recording. So first you will need to go to drupal.org. And then at the top here, there's an option to try Drupal, and I'm going to go ahead and download it. So you click the download link. And so here you'll have the download Drupal zip. So I'm actually going to see if I can download the tarball, which is this one here. So I'm actually going to right click it and copy this link location. Now, if you're installing on the same server that you already have set up for this, then you can just click the link and extract it on the server. However, the server that I'm using is actually not on this machine that I'm making this tutorial from. So if you're downloading this, you can actually just click the link and then get the download as a tarball. But since I'm actually going to install this on another server instead of the machine that I'm currently using, I'm actually going to right click and copy the link. And then I'm going to go here and do wget and then paste the path in and hit enter. And what it will do is it will download Drupal. And so now I have a tarball. I'm going to actually rename this tarball. And so next I will unzip the tarball. So you do gunzip and then the file name. That will leave you with a tar file, and then you can extract this tar file, which I'm going to actually make a directory called Drupal 8. I'm going to move this tarball into that directory. And then I'm going to go into my Drupal 8 directory and then untar. So tar-xf drupal.tar. And you'll see that it created another folder called Drupal-8.6.7, which is the latest version. And so we can go inside of this folder and you'll see that you have the default structure for Drupal. So what I'm actually going to do now is move this up to my home directory, and then I'm going to go in my web group directory and make a link to point to this Drupal directory so that I don't have to use pseudo privileges or anything of that nature to make changes to the file systems or adding modules at a later point in time. If you are going to add more modules or themes, you'll need to make sure you have write access in particular to that particular directory where your Drupal installation is going to be located. Most commonly, this will be done in the web root directory. However, because this is my development environment, I'm actually going to set it up differently so that my Drupal files are not directly in my web root directory, since my web root directory requires the usage of pseudo privileges. So I'm going to now move this Drupal 8 directory up a level and go up a level, and then I'm actually going to remove this. So once you have Drupal set up in your root directory, you'll need to navigate to your server, and if you put it in a particular folder, you'll need to go to that folder. And this page will come up. So I am using English, so I'll click Save and Continue. So you can select the standard profile or the minimal profile, and then they actually have this demo that's built in, which has the pre-built functionality and capabilities in it. I'm actually, for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to use the minimal profile. However, if you use the standard profile, there will be a lot more modules already installed, as well as some content types installed, but we'll cover those in a future tutorial. So I'm selecting minimal and then save and continue. Now next, I have to verify the requirements. So the first is that the file system is not writable, which is very fixable, as well as the settings file does not exist. So what I'm going to have to do is go to my directory. I'm actually going to give this folder full right public permissions. Now, I do not recommend doing this in a production site. However, because this is a tutorial and I'm showing you how to do things, I'm just going to go ahead and do it. So I'm actually going to enter in to change the permissions. I'm going to do chmod 777 and going to do that recursively on the Drupal 8 directory. And just to verify that is done correctly, I'm going to list the files in here. And as you see, it is fully readable and writable by all. So if I go down here and click try again, the file system issue has now been addressed. The next step is to create a settings default file or a settings file. And so basically you just have to copy, as it mentions here, copy the default settings.php to settings.php. So I'll go do that next. So going into the Drupal 8 directory, and then I will go to sites directory. And as you see, there's a default directory. So I'm going to go to default. And now I'm going to copy the default settings file. So default settings.php to settings.php. And just to confirm, I'll list the directory contents. And as you see, the settings PHP file has now been created. So if I go down here and click try again, it's still complaining about that. And so the reason that it probably is as you see, the file that was copied with the wrong permissions. So again, I'm going to do chmod on this. Again, I don't recommend having public writable files in your production environment. This is fine since this is my development environment. So now it's fully writable. And I'll click try again one more time. All right, so we've got past the verification of the requirements. Next, I'm going to set up a database. So if you have not set up a database before, and I'm going to use MySQL for this particular installation, the first thing you can do is log into your database. So I'm logging in as root. However, I do have a password set for root. And again, this is a development instance. So a lot of the things that you normally do in a production instance will not apply in this particular scenario since it is a development instance. If you're not familiar with using MySQL from the terminal or command line, you can also use phpMyAdmin, which I do have up here. But for the sake of this, I'm going to go ahead and type it in using the command line. So what I'm actually going to do is create database. And so you would name this whatever database you want to name it. So we're going to call this, since it's like a tutorial and using my schema convention, I'm going to call it Drupal 8. And then I'm also going to give it a dedicated database user. So Drupal 8 at localhost, identified by password. And so I'm just going to make up a password. It does not really matter. However, 6543210. However, I do recommend you using something more secure than what I'm using here for the sake of this tutorial. And then I'm also going to make sure to grant all privileges to the user. Start to and it looks like I misspelled this particular command here, so I'm going to retype that in again. So now that I have this, I can do show databases. And as you see, I have a Drupal 8 database down here that I just created. And then I can also do select user host from mysql.user, where user is equal to v Drupal 8. As you see, my user also exists in the users table. So with this information, I can actually go into my form. And so my database name is v Drupal 8. My username is the same, and my password will be entered there. And then this is where you enter in the database host information, as well as the port number. So localhost is the host, port number is the default MySQL number of 3306. And then if you want, you can enter in a table name prefix. So this makes sure that you don't have any collisions with any other table names that may already exist in the database. If you're installing, let's say, multiple Drupal installations in the same database, you want to use a table prefix. Also, if you just want to uniquely identify what this purpose of this particular database is by, prefixing the table names. That way, if you do, let's say, merge this database with another database in the future, you don't have to go rename all the tables. The tables will already have their naming conventions. So I'm going to enter in v8 underscore as the name for the table prefix, and then hit save and continue. All right, and so the next step is that it will install Drupal. And so there are only 10 modules in the minimum installation. However, in the standard installation, there are more modules that will have to be installed. So that install site step will take a bit longer. The final page is to configure the site. As you see here, there is a warning that indicates that the settings file have been updated and the right permissions should be changed. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now since it's showing it. So I'll exit out of the database, and since I'm still in the site's default directory, I can list the permissions on the settings file. And as you see, it is world readable and writable. So I'm going to do chmod, and I'm going to actually set this to 555, and now the settings file is not writable by any of the users, myself included, but it is readable and it is executable. And I do recommend leaving the executable permission in place just in case, because some PHP setups are different than others where it will not read files that are not executable. Going back to the configure site page, so I'm going to go here with the site name, and we're just going to call it Drupal 8. You're entering in your site email address. And so I'm just going to make one up for the sake of this tutorial. And then I'm going to use that same, enter in the username, and this will be the administrator account. And so give it a password and confirm the password. And then it uses the email address from the site address. If you want to change that to something different, you can. I'm actually going to change this to site or Drupal sites at localhost.com. And then I'm going to set the default country. You don't have to do this, but I like to do it out of habit. So United States is my country, and I am in the Chicago time zone. I'm going to actually turn off the update notifications. However, if you are using this in a development environment, I would recommend leaving this on so you know when to do updates to your Drupal site. If you are doing this in a production environment, I would recommend turning this off in that scenario. Some people choose to leave it on as their production site is always running versus their development site is not always running, but that preference will be left up to you. Last but not least, you click save and continue. And now I'm getting the Drupal page. All right, and so now you have completed the installation of Drupal. If you need to change the theme, you can do that, but that will be covered in a future tutorial. So please be sure if you have any questions to drop those in the comments section below. Please consider subscribing to the channel. That way I know you like the content that I create and you get notified when I create more content. Until next time, keep engineering.